Welcome to the Big Muddy Speaker Series, number 4,782, or maybe it just seems that way. But we've been doing this for a long time, since 2011. Anybody that has any ideas on presentations, let me know. Preferably with a speaker in mind and not just a subject. But we're always looking for more speakers. And so tonight, we have June Holte, who's going to talk to us about Drawdown. Drawdown is I'm going to let June tell you all about Drawdown. But basically, we're talking about what you personally can do. I'm just going to stop talking and let June take over.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I'm very honored, actually, to be here with you. I had the pleasure of learning about the Big Muddy initiative recently when I helped Holly Hughes disassemble the globe, and so that's how the connection was made. And I want to get a sense of who's here with us, and then we'll dive into the material. And so I know that all of you are connected to the Rivers Initiative, but I want to get a sense of how many of you have, let's see, I'll ask two questions. If you would raise your hand for one or two, if you have a sense that you know about climate change and you know it's urgent and important, but you just haven't had time to really delve into it or deal with it and face it, or if you're somebody who is already engaged in issues around climate change, very knowledgeable. So I just want to get a sense. So if you're someone who's just kind of putting your toe in the water and not real knowledgeable about it, but really want to make it more of a priority, raise your hand. Hi, so I can see ya. Thank you. And then for those of you who are pretty experienced and already engaging in climate change in a big way, wow, we've got a great group that's already engaging. How many of you have either read of or heard of the book Drawdown and the Drawdown Initiative, Project Drawdown? Thank you very much. I see you over there too. Okay, so some of you read the introduction to whatever degree you read the invitation. I'm part of a group of people called the Kansas City Drawdown Pioneers, and we heard about the Drawdown Initiative through Omega Institute a year ago in the fall, and we found out that the Pachamama Alliance was doing a pilot project in the spring. Has anybody heard of the Pachamama Alliance? The word Pachamama is from the Quechua language of the Peruvian and Ecuadorian Andes, and it means the sacred presence of the earth, the sky, the universe, and all time. It's loosely translated as Mother Earth. So the Pachamama Alliance is doing a global initiative to get widespread engagement in reversing climate change. And so that's why you're here this evening. I'm going to tell you all about that as we explore what's possible. And this is our home. We are creatures on and of the earth. And our agenda tonight is just welcoming you, welcoming me, welcoming the intention that we have for the evening. And we'll touch on our mission, both tonight and the Kansas City Drawdown Pioneers mission. And then we'll talk specifically about the possibility of actually reversing global warming. And then what's next for you as an individual after we've been through the whole evening, and then I'll bid you adieu. We want to invite you to consider and be able to see by the end of the evening that reversing global warming is actually possible, and that you have an important role to play. It's not the same as anybody else's role. It's not big or small, it's your role. And then to discover what your next steps will be going forward from the evening. So this next video is produced by the University of Arizona, and it is the quickest orientation overall to Drawdown that we've been able to find. And it starts by looking at how we're all familiar with thinking about climate change and global warming. And it's often we're opposing it, we're fighting it, we're going to resist it, we're going to mitigate it. This is the context that we live inside of, which is portrayed in the beginning of the video. And then we'll move into, well, what if there's another possibility about how to respond to and how to relate to global warming?
Antarctica, the world's greatest freezer, is melting.
The Earth is doomed.
How will humans fight back before our cities are inundated?
And we're running out of time.
Now that was scary, right? But that's how most people get their information on climate change. Now we're not saying that the science is inaccurate. Yes, there is a problem, which is rising carbon in the atmosphere, which has history of going up and down. Here's where humans came in. Here's where we started burning oil, gas and coal. And here's where we are today. In fact, the actual level of carbon dioxide equivalent is 490 ppm. So yes, that's the problem statement. But is it game over? Or are there solutions to address this? Global warming has been in the public sphere for more than 40 years.
Our atmosphere seems to be getting warmer. This is bad? Well, it's been calculated a few degrees rise in the Earth's temperature would melt the polar ice caps.
But no one has mapped out concrete solutions to reverse global warming. Well, until now. Environmentalist Paul Hawken started a small organization in Sausalito to map out the solutions. He called it Project Drawdown. Drawdown is basically a military term which means a reduction in size of military force. But he defined drawdown as reduction in the carbon in atmosphere. Also, the term drawdown establishes a goal that was basically missing from climate change discussions. They didn't have money, so they sent out calls to universities, and college students from 22 countries and 6 continents showed up as drawdown research fellows, and with the help of 120 advisors, they came up with 100 solutions that are in hand and practical to reverse global warming. What did they do? They did the math. They ranked all these solutions based on overall carbon dioxide equivalent arrested in gigatons until 2050 in a conservative scenario. They figured out what could be the cost for the next 30 years and the net savings. And all this data is based on peer-reviewed research. These are the cliche images we see when someone talks about climate change. But it's much more than that. Let's see some of the drawdown solutions and try to break these cliches. Afforestation. Creating new forests where there were none before is the aim of afforestation. It is ranked number 15 out of 100 with a potential savings of $392 billion. High-speed rail. It is powered almost exclusively by electricity and not diesel. Compared to driving, flying, or riding conventional rail, it is the fastest way to travel between 2 points that are a few hundred miles apart and reduces carbon emissions up to 90%. High-speed rail is expensive and requires high ridership to break even, but it can be an important component of a sustainable transportation system and bring vitality to city centers. Nobody in the world knows better land management than indigenous communities. They have long been the front line of resistance against deforestation, mineral, oil and gas extraction, and the expansion of monocrop plantations. Their resistance prevents land-based carbon emissions and maintains or increases carbon sequestration. Rice is the staple food of 3 billion people, providing 1/5 of calories consumed worldwide. Its cultivation is responsible for at least 10% of agricultural greenhouse gas emissions and 9 to 19% of global methane emissions. New techniques can make rice production efficient, dependable, and sustainable, helping to meet growing demand for this staple food without causing global warming. Clean cook stoves is 21 on the list. Around the world, 3 billion people cook over open fires or on rudimentary stoves. The cooking fuels used by 40% of humanity are wood, charcoal, animal dung, crop residue, and coal, which release plumes of smoke and soot. Affordable, effective, and durable clean cooking technologies can cut emissions by an incredible 95%. Wind energy is at the crest of initiatives to address global warming in the coming 3 decades. The wind industry is marked by a rapid increase in number of turbines, dropping costs, and heightened performance. In many areas, wind is either competitive with or less expensive than coal-generated electricity. Onshore wind turbine is the number 2 solution, and offshore wind turbine is number 22 on the list. Combined together, they become the number 1 solution to reverse global warming.
This is Namora, a remote community high in Peru's northern Andes, where farmers spend their days attending to their potato crops under the bright blue sky. People here used to rely on candles for a bit of light after dark, when temperatures can drop to near freezing. But a few months ago, solar panels were installed on their small adobe homes, providing enough electricity for a few light bulbs, a cell phone charger, a radio, and a television. The switch has brought big social and economic benefits.
And just like that, Rooftop Solar is replacing kerosene and providing electricity to people in rural South America and parts of Africa. Rooftop Solar will gain popularity as the cost of panels falls, driven by incentives to accelerate growth and economies of scale in manufacturing. Rooftop Solar is number 10 on the list. Waste production multiplied tenfold over the last century and will likely double again by 2025. Half or less of that waste is generated at a household level. Recycling can reduce emissions because producing new products from recovered materials often saves energy. Managing household waste tends to be the responsibility of city governments or of informal waste collection in lower-income cities. Leading cities have achieved recycling rates of 65% or more. Household recycling is number 55 on the list. There are 20 solutions out of 100 which are coming attractions and have great potential for drawdown. Marine permaculture is an innovation to restore natural ocean overturning circulation, a process that brings nutrient-rich waters to the sea surface and restores aquatic plant and animal productivity. Floating kelp forests could sequester billions of tons of carbon dioxide while providing food, feed, fertilizer, fiber, and biofuels to the world. According to a 2014 study, building with wood could reduce annual global emissions of carbon dioxide by 14 to 31%. Conventional wisdom suggests that wood and high-rise buildings are incompatible and that flammability is an issue. But processing and manufacturing technologies in wood is challenging those limitations. New, high-performance products are more fire-resistant as well as more cost-effective and stronger than ever.
These cows are eating seaweed. Isn't that cool? See? Seaweed. The cows. Another one over here.
A team of scientists in Australia have tested a wide range of seaweeds mixed with feeds in artificial cow stomachs, and they have found out that a species of red algae reduced methane production from livestock by 99%. This would reduce the amount of soy, corn, and grass required as feed to the cows. Project Drawdown also found some very surprising solutions based on their overall ranking, like reduced food waste, which is number 3 on the list. 1/3 of the food raised or prepared does not make it from farm or factory to fork. The food we waste is responsible for roughly 8% of global emissions. There are a number of ways to address this issue. In lower-income countries, improving infrastructure for storage, processing, and transportation is essential. In higher-income regions, major interventions are needed at the retail and consumer levels. Beyond addressing emissions, these efforts can also help to meet future food demand. Plant-rich diet is number 4 on the list. Shifting to a diet rich in plants is a demand-side solution to global warming that runs counter to the meat-centric Western diet, which is on the rise globally. Plant-rich diets reduce emissions and also tend to be healthier, leading to a lower rates of chronic diseases. Education lays the foundation for vibrant lives for girls and women, their families, and their communities. It also is one of the most powerful levers available for avoiding emissions by curbing population growth. Women with more years of education have fewer and healthier children and actively manage their reproductive health. Educated girls realize higher wages and greater upward mobility, contributing to economic growth. Their rates of maternal mortality drop, as do mortality rates of their babies. They are less likely to marry as children or against their will. They have lower incidence of HIV, AIDS, and malaria. Their agricultural plots are more productive and their families better nourished. Today, there are economic, cultural, and safety-related barriers that still impede 62 million girls around the world from realizing their right to education. Educating girls is surprisingly number 6 on the list. Related with educating girls is family planning, the number 7 solution. Securing women's right to voluntary, high-quality family planning around the world would have powerful positive impacts on the health, welfare, and life expectancy of both women and their children. It also can affect greenhouse gas emissions. Based on carbon dioxide equivalent reductions, educating girls and family planning are number 6 and number 7 solutions respectively, compared to the number 1 solution, refrigerant management. However, if we combine number 6 and number 7, it becomes the number 1 solution. So, to summarize, these are the top 20 solutions. Refrigerant management is number 1. Educating girls and family planning are number 6 and number 7. Electricity generation is 5 of top 20, and food is 8 of top 20 solutions. Which is the most important out of all these solutions? All of them. Every solution is important. So what's the call to action? Well, we're sure that there's at least one of these 100 solutions that you're most passionate about and aspire to make Drawdown happen. Yes, Drawdown is possible.
So when you think about the process of how change or transformation or cultural shifts, paradigm shifts take place, if you think about something that you've gone through, ask yourself the question, which comes first, the problem or the solution? Which comes first? The problem or the solution? The problem. Very good, very good. And so you see that there is a problem, and you also see that there's something that you personally can do to address the problem. You're actually not going to participate in the solutions, right? So step back and think about, some of you may know the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a global institution that measures the science and publishes reports about the state of the science about climate change. When they came out with their 2013 report, some of you may know it, they just came out with their newest report. I think it was last week or the week before. And it looked like everything was accelerating, and none of the models had predicted how rapidly the changes and the dangers were coming. And a lot of thinkers and activists kind of gave up. They said, game over, we can't win. And actually, Paul Hawken said, some of his friends said, we're moving to Vancouver. We can't do this. These are some of the thought leaders who are on the front lines for the last 30, 40 years. And so some of you may know Paul Hawken. He's the editor of this book and the instigator of this project. We'll hear from him in just a minute. He said, what if we look at the situation through a different lens? And what if we redefine what the problem is? As we heard, most of what we hear, or how we're educated, or how we come into contact with climate, is through the lens of there's something wrong, it's terrible, it's hopeless, it's impossible, and then change the subject. And so Paul said, he got some of his colleagues together and said, what questions should we ask? And they said, well, where are the solutions to climate change? And you'll hear him talk about it. If you actually do a Google search on climate change solutions before Drawdown came out, people just didn't have any good answers. And he'll talk more about that. And so he took some of his own retirement money and put out a call to research institutions around the world, he and his partners in Sausalito, and they said, hey, you want to write the equivalent of a PhD dissertation in the next 6 to 9 months and get a $1,000 stipend for it? And to their surprise, as you saw in the video, lots and lots of people jumped at the opportunity. And so a coalition of now more than 300 researchers, writers, artists, advisors, consultants came together and worked on this project. And their results were published in April of 2017. And the last time I heard Paul speak about it, he said they haven't heard a single gotcha from anyone that says that their modeling was too aggressive. They really went conservative so that they could actually look for what are the solutions of climate change. Where are they? Who knows what they are? So once you see that there is a problem that you can do something about, you can actually begin to orient your life and your energies and your talents toward addressing whatever the problem is. And since this is an unprecedented scale and scope, we've never faced it before, now that the work has been done to identify what the solutions are, it's possible for all of us to get engaged personally and collectively in a way that can actually reverse climate change within 30 years. And so the work that they did was looking conservatively at what already exists. It's not, so they discovered 80 solutions that are ready to scale and are already starting to scale, and then 20, as you saw in the video, 20 that are coming attractions. And so let's listen to Paul tell us about tell us more information about how, and again, we want to shift our relationship to global warming from fear, from we got to mitigate it, we got to fight it, we got to stop it, the fear-based, and we want to look at an orientation of considering that perhaps climate change isn't happening to us, but it's actually happening for us, that global warming, sorry, I use those terms loosely, like the climate is always changing cyclically. If you look at NASA data of temperature variations year to year, climate is always varying, and we all know that. But global warming is what we want to address, which is the heightened escalation of the temperature. So we want to shift our relationship to global warming, and we also want to catalyze widespread engagement with and sustained commitment to the global movement to reverse global warming, now that we actually know what the solutions are.
If you Google the top 10 solutions to climate change, top 20, 30, 40, 50, you name a number, but the top ones, what you get are proverbs. It's kind of like be kind to your mother, eat smart, consume less, be efficient, move closer to work, use power strips at home. I mean, things that are definitely sensible, make total sense, but also give you a sense that we're screwed. Because the enormity of the problem, the challenge that exists, it makes you feel sort of hopeless, actually. Most of the solutions in the world that are being proffered to people are about people's beliefs, whether they're from experts or they're from activists or they're from institutes or NGOs. It's just our beliefs about what we need to do. And like any good proverb, they're true, but they don't actually come together in a way that gives us a sense that cumulatively together and with those solutions, we can actually reverse global warming. And the idea that we should aim for mitigation or reduction or stabilization is just crazy, because ppm right now of carbon dioxide parts per million is 402. Humans have never existed when it was over 300. So we're in terra nova. We're in a place right now that no human being of any sort of type, and certainly civilizational or not, has ever existed. So the science about what's going to happen, how fast it's going to happen, is actually speculative. It's good science, but it's speculative. And the idea that we should adapt, mitigate, reduce at this point at 402 is, to me, absurd. If you're going the wrong way, you have to stop. You just can't slow down and say, now we're not going the wrong way. You still are going the wrong way. And that's why I say right now the proposals around addressing global warming are like Thelma and Louise in slow motion. We're just going right over the cliff, but we want to go slower. And that is not an inspirational goal for humankind. The only goal that makes sense for humanity is to reverse global warming. It's to stop, turn around, and go the other way. And I don't believe that you can achieve something if you don't name what it is you want to achieve. And naming the goal of reversal actually opens up possibility. There's this idea that somehow if we make our goals too big, that it's too hard. It's the other way around. The bigger you make your goal, the more spaciousness there is in your mind, and creativity, imagination soars within a big goal and doesn't get very far when the goal is really tiny and minuscule. Drawdown is the point in time when greenhouse gases peak and begin to go down on a year-to-year basis. At least that's what it means in respect to climate. You can't achieve drawdown unless you bring carbon back home, because we're way past the point in the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that would lead to a stabilized planet, or stabilized weather systems. That's gone. So drawdown depends on bringing carbon back home. There's only one way we know how to do it, and it happens every year, and that is through photosynthesis. And if you look at NASA maps of carbon dioxide emissions span of a year, what you see is that every year, actually, we do draw down 6 to 7 ppm. So it goes up and it goes down, it goes up and it goes down. The problem is it doesn't go down to where it was before, and so there is a slow incremental increase of CO2 and greenhouse gases. So it's really about that equilibration, getting to that point where we bring back every year, over the course of a year, the same amount that we're emitting, and then bringing back a little more, and that point's drawdown. And that is a very doable thing. And the way we face it, the way we looked at it, is as if it's almost an impossible task, and it's the other way around. The solutions surround us and around us all the time. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is the most magnificent and greatest scientific endeavor in the history of humankind. There is no second or third place. Given that, you would think that we would know what to do cold. But actually the IPCC doesn't really work on solutions. They do have a third working group that is about solutions, and the one that came out 2 years ago was 2,017 pages long, and I don't think anybody I know read it, and it didn't become accessible in a way to people that they knew what to do as individuals, as communities, neighborhoods, cities, towns. It didn't make sense at all. It was science. So when we started Project Drawdown, we were working into a vacuum. What we did is map, measure, and model extant, existing, practical, hands-on, W.W. Granger, everybody can get them solutions or do them, and see what would happen if they continued to scale in a rigorous but reasonable way over 30 years, and whether or not we could achieve drawdown, which is that first point in time when greenhouse gases decline. And we just began a process of mapping and measuring and modeling them. But first we had to cull them and collate them and look at them all. We looked at hundreds of solutions and started to, in a sense, measure their impact. Either they have an impact in terms of reducing the amount of carbon, CO2, or greenhouse gases that are going up, or they actually bring carbon dioxide back home. They sequester carbon. And we obviously were interested in both. And in that process, we only used peer-reviewed literature to measure the carbon impact. We didn't use anecdotes or stories or narratives. And on the economic side, the same thing. We model both the impact and the cost and the savings. It's a very complex model because every solution impacts every other solution in some way. It's one system, it's one Earth. And when the solutions came out, we were shocked. With the top solutions, we were like, no, you're kidding. And we didn't even see it coming, actually. You would imagine, or at least I think most people imagine, that the top solutions would be solar and wind and electric vehicles, don't cut trees and stop eating beef, you know. and there's some truth to that, but not as much as you think. The top solution is actually refrigerant management, which is so prosaic, but the hydrofluorocarbons used in air conditioners and refrigerators are thousands of times more powerful in their greenhouse warming potential as our CO2 gases. And so a small release of those has a much, much bigger impact. And the second one was onshore wind, which I think not unexpected or not surprising. The third one, biggest solution, is reduce food waste. And that surprised us. And when you think about it, we use 10 calories for every calorie we eat. We have an extraordinary agricultural system in terms of how much energy it uses and wastes. It's not just the production of the food, it's the cold chains, it's the trucking, it's the stores, it's the grab-and-go cases, you know, it's like driving to the store, it's going back home, it's the packaging, it's the plastic. Our food system is very energy intensive. And then that food goes into landfills, and that landfills are anaerobic and they produce methane gas, which is 25 times more powerful than CO2 in terms of its greenhouse warming potential. So food is critical. And then right next to that, at number 4, is actually plant-rich diet. It's not vegan or vegetarian. You may, that's fine. But it's a reduced meat diet for sure, to the level where actually it's healthy. And then number 5 is protecting, restoring tropical forests. Number 6 is educating girls. It's the girl effect. It's been talked about much. And if she goes beyond 10th grade, she becomes a woman more on her terms. She's educated. Her choices, her reproductive choices change. They earn more money and put the resources into fewer children. So they're now on a cycle of well-being, so to speak. And then number 7 solution is family planning. Those two combined, if you put them together, are the number 1 solution to global warming, which is empowering girls and women. And all I can say to that is, who knew? It's not a solar panel, it's a woman. And when you really let that go in, you think about it and say, well, yeah, I mean, it can't be a thing. We have this idea that somehow this inanimate object is going to save our behinds, and no, it's not. We need that inanimate object. It's beautiful, but we're going to save ourselves. And it's not surprising when you look at it that girls and women came out number 1 when you think about it. If you're a game changer, what you will want to look at is all 100 solutions. And one of the mistakes we make is by looking for constantly the top solutions and focusing on the top solutions. If you look at Drawdown, we have 80 solutions we measured and modeled, and 20 more which are so new you can't model them. But so let's just stick to the 80 for a minute. Those 80, some of them in the 60s and 70s, have a relatively small impact compared to the top 7 or top 10 solutions. But you cannot achieve drawdown, you cannot achieve reversal of global warming unless you do them all. So there is no small solution. That's the point. We need all of it, and we need to honor all of each other. And so when somebody looks at that list, it's what resonates with them. Everybody could probably resonate with food waste, just unconsciousness about purchasing, consumption. Okay, so where do they make sense to you? Where do they make sense to your community? Where do they make sense to your village, or to your town, or to your company, or to your city, or to your state, or your province, or your farm, or your grassland, or your cows? It depends on who you are and where you are, your culture. And in that way, you know what it is going to be where you can actually make a difference and accelerate the uptake of a given practice or technique or technology, rather than saying, therefore, you should do this. I don't have no idea what anybody should do. I know that people know what they should do when they read and understand something that makes sense to them.
So we're going to give you some handouts before you leave that have that information so you can take it home with you and share and talk with your neighbors and your groups and your families and so on. Right now, I'd like to ask Kathy to hand out that first handout, which some of you have already. It's called Summary of Drawdown by Solutions. It's 2 pages. The first page lists those top 80 and then the 20 coming attractions. And then the second page is listed by sector. You saw the pie chart and the other visual depiction of the sectors: food, transportation, energy, so on. This is another depiction that you can take home with you of those sectors. So it lists those top 80. Thank you for turning that light on. It lists those top 80 by sector: land use, energy, food, materials, women and girls, buildings and cities, and transport. And so for now, just to know that you're going to get to take that home with you and engage with that. And so if you want to look at that for a little bit, that's great. Otherwise, we're going to move on. This is what the book looks like. And when the Pachamama Alliance has created a way of getting together with groups, like a team or a class, where you work through the Drawdown book together in ways that are inspiring and surprising and fun and mutual support so that we can rapidly get lots of people engaged. This is a list, another listing of what you have there by sector. And here's another definition of drawdown in case you didn't get it. It's that point in time when the atmospheric greenhouses gas concentration peak and begin to decline on a year-to-year basis. The top 20, which you've seen twice now. Here are a couple of examples, and just to reiterate and make sure everyone's catching on here, through their modeling, they did 3 different categories of modeling and to run the numbers and then rank the median. So everything is ranked according to how much CO2 is reduced when you scale this action up over 30 years' time, and then it's ranked amongst all the actions. And then additionally, as you saw, food waste. By the way, on our website, kcdrawdown.org, our first funded project is we have 50 worm composting bins to give away, which is addressing food waste. And you can see the telepresence is most of the actions that are able to be quantified according to their cost and the net savings. That's also a part of what you'll see and why they're ranked the way they are. So let's hear what Paul has to say further.
If you look at the solutions in Project Drawdown, except for 2 or 3 of them, we would want to do every single one of those solutions, regardless of whether you understand climate science, whether it's warming or whether it's not, or whether there's more CO2 up there or it's having an effect, because they have so many cascading beneficial impacts and effects on human health, on security, on jobs, on economic well-being, on peace. The list goes on and on and on. So the solutions to reversing global warming are the solutions to many things. They engender economic and ecological regeneration. In other words, they bring more life back to people, place, planet, animals, diversity, forests, oceans, fisheries, you name it. And they do it in such a way that actually people benefit. That is, it's not over there and you stay poor over here. It actually brings those two together, those who lack and the carnage, the destruction that's being visited upon our living systems, both up in the air, in the atmosphere, all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. There has been a silver bullet mentality in the climate movement, as if there was some magical solution, that would solve it all, or pretty much all of it. And there still is that mindset. The real game changer are people and communities and human beings. Those are the game changers, because it's our game. We created it. We're the only ones that can change it. Technology can't change the game. So when we went out, we had the same question I think everyone has, which is, well, what should I do? What should we do? What we do know, given the science, is that the odds are really long. And my attitude is, let's take them. Cool. I like long odds. It's very motivating. And you just accept them. It's not a matter of saying, well, we shouldn't, I want even odds or better odds. No, they're just odds. And to me, it's a question of whether it's game over or game on. This is a game on moment as opposed to a game over moment. And what we are doing, smaller we, is reflecting back to humanity its collective wisdom. And what we're saying is, actually, we are on the case. That it's not as though we're numb and dumb and stupid. We actually do know what to do. We are doing it. We modeled what is. That's why we know it's possible. And in so doing, we're trying to reflect back to the greater we that we're on the case. Not only do we know what to do and are doing it, but humanity is just extraordinarily brilliant and such genius in us, And what's coming, that is what we didn't model, is extraordinary. And if you can't get from that a sense of well, it's game on, then you should probably do something else. But for me, and for I think everybody who's been touched by it and who's touched it by creating it, there is a sense that the odds are irrelevant. For game changers, there's a quote in the book, and it says the one thing we haven't looked at is our mind. It's our thinking. Our thinking caused it. And when you change your thinking, it's a completely different world. You see a completely different world. And part of that is to understand that there is possibility in a way that is grounded, science-based, practical, doable right now. The purpose of the book is, at the end of it, I hope that the reader understands that if we're going to solve this civilizational crisis, we have to hold hands and collaborate. And to do so, we have to actually listen to those people who deny, people who don't believe, quote, quote, to people who think the science says something else. And that is how we create a change, not by dividing, not by polarizing, not by polemics, not by anything that it says that others are other. In other words, that you're other, you're not as good, as well, as important, as meaningful, as contributing as these people over here. And whether you're bent towards the activist side or the research side or the amelioration side or the attending the suffering side, I mean, there's so many different ways, you can, reach out to this world. It doesn't make any difference. We need them all. Even those who deny the science, we shouldn't really demonize or criticize them. They're doing the best they can. They are. Everyone's doing the best they can. We can sit back and say, you're not doing well enough or good enough, or that's really inappropriate. That's your judgment. That's your mind. But the fact is, they are doing the best they can. And when we get off of our sort of, position of knowing more, being better, and seeing them as lesser, then we can actually hear what they're saying. And it's really important, if we're going to make this change, that we listen. Is global warming happening to us or for us? Because if it's happening to you, you're the victim, you're the object, you got born at the wrong time, short end of the stick, not fair, you want to sue Exxon, you want to make somebody wrong, you want to demonize, you want to blame somebody else for how you feel and what's happening. It's not a great place to live or be or think or create. And if it happens for you, if global warming happenings for us, what does that mean? First of all, it means that it's beautiful feedback. It's feedback. If without feedback, we really suffer and get stupid at least. And not only is it great feedback, but it tells us what to do. It feeds our imagination, it feeds creativity, it feeds innovation, and it feeds a meaningful life. And you couldn't have a more meaningful life than to take on the greatest crisis human civilization has ever faced. And it's like, here, I have a gift for you. What is it? It's this, civilizational crisis. You came just at the right time. And we know what to do. That's the most important. We do know what to do. And this idea that, that the media keeps putting in our face, is that, that the 7 deadly sins are preeminent now and rule the world, and that's not true. And we just are blinded to it by what we read and see. And this is about changing who we are, how we think, how we speak, how we talk to each other, how we act. And I can't think of anything that would give more meaning to a person's life, than global warming.
So, as I started out by saying, we want to support you in reorienting your relationship to global warming from that of fear, we're the victim of it, something's wrong, it's somebody else's fault, it's too big for me, I can't do anything, and just hoping that somebody else will do something about it that will actually save our butts. So the 5 most dangerous words in the English language? Maybe it will go away. And so, as I said, we want to support you in shifting your relationship to global warming as something that is a feedback loop, as Paul was saying, that every dynamic system has feedback loops, and if you don't pay attention to the feedback, the system's going to collapse, whatever system that is, a living system, a dynamic system. And so it's feedback for us, and now that we know what the solutions are, we can all just roll up our sleeves and get involved, which brings to the next handout. This is another visual depiction. All of these are available on the website, but I'm going to be giving you at the very end when you leave a handout that actually has a summary of what each of the actions are, and they're listed by sector, so you can go and look at what exactly does it mean, what does silvopasture mean, or what are the definitions of all these things. And this is the slide you already saw that looks by sector, and as Paul pointed out, the sectors are not the ranking is useful to understand the impact, but we invite people to look at what calls you based on your current skills, your passions, your resources, your networks, your communities that you're already involved in. And we know that you are already engaged in very important work related to the environment, related to rivers, and the health of our rivers, which is our blood system of the earth, and whatever else you're involved in. We want to invite you to consider how you can incorporate the news that drawdown is possible, and that it's the new relationship that you have with it, thinking of it as a feedback system, and how can you map that onto what you're already doing. It might be that whatever tabling event you are, you say, these are the 5 drawdown actions that we're doing, and this is how much carbon that we're able to sequester, or something. You just use your creativity. And our intent as an organization is to mobilize hundreds of thousands of people over a short period of time through networks to get engaged. We have a community of people who's doing the Pachamama Alliance circles, which is a structured way of working through. It's like a team kind of model. I think, Patty, were you on an eco team? It's something like that, where your team gets together and there's videos that you watch and some content, and then you have a homework assignment, and then you come back to the next gathering and share what you learned with everybody on your team. And so everybody rapidly learns more, and we gain momentum and excitement and passion for what we're involved in. That's a 5-session series that you go through at your own pace. So that's what we're doing, and we invite any of you to join with us if you'd like, but we also invite you to take this as rapidly as possible to your other communities that you're involved in. There's that handout, that next handout that I just mentioned. Did you pass that out, Kathy? This number? Okay. That's all right. No problem. So the one we're looking at now is called KC Drawdown Pioneers, an invitation to participate. It's the single sheet, not the one that's stapled together. And we would like to invite each of you to just look at this and consider for yourself what makes sense. Way down at the bottom it says, I can't get involved right now. Check the box that says, sorry, I wish you great success, but not for me at this time. I'd like to stay informed. Here's my email address. And then if you're somewhere, that's for people who don't want to get involved right now, but everybody else can look up here and find out ways to learn more about what we're up to, and you can check one of those boxes. If you'd like to help spread the word, talk with others, invite family, friends, colleagues, classmates to another introduction to Drawdown. If you want to contact an organization or individual that you think might want to co-sponsor, or send invitations to their email list, that kind of thing. And if you'd like to be a part of our growing team of ambassadors to help develop and coordinate and execute our efforts here in Kansas City, if you have social media skills related to PR or design and development newsletters, design of materials, Facebook, so forth and so on. And if you would like to let us know that you're currently involved in one or more Drawdown Solution in the Kansas City area, but you want a chance to present the work you're doing to others, let us know. The sectors that are listed in that last handout that I'm giving you, that you saw on the slides, and it's also available on the website. We're planning to have sector gatherings in 2019. So everybody that's interested in land use can actually find other people in the metro area, and everybody who's interested in buildings and cities or whatever sector. So we plan to have those. So if you want to let us know that you'd like to be a part of those sector meetings in the future, or if you know people who are active in one or more Drawdown Solution already, and that who might love a chance to present their work to the sector meetings, that's where you would let us know about that, and other skills that you might have or ideas. And feel free to write on the back. This is for us to receive feedback and communication from you, but it's also for you to actually clarify for yourself, now that you understand that even though, as Paul said, the odds may be long, but they actually know what are the solutions to global warming. Now that you know that, and you can see it as a feedback rather than something to make you afraid and avoidant, now that you know that, clarify what it is that you'd like to do as your next step in not going home tonight, oh, wasn't that a good presentation, and getting busy and forgetting about it. So take a couple minutes for yourself to look at this handout. I have some pens if people don't have pens, and we'll collect them at the end if you'd like to give feedback to us. And if you'd like to take it home with you, that would be okay too, but we really want your feedback. And I have a short cord, so somebody want to take the pens around. Any questions or concerns?
Are we supposed to have those now?
Have what?
The paper you just talked about.
Yes, yeah, the Drawdown Solutions, that's the one that we want you to have right now. It's blue on the top. It's a single sheet. And those categories that I just read to you are what's on the sheet. And so we want you to just take a couple of minutes to listen to your own heart and think about your own skills and talents and resources and networks, and clarify for yourself what your next steps are as you leave this evening. And while you're doing that, if anybody else has questions that I could answer, I'd be happy to field some questions if you'd like. Go ahead, there's 2 questions over here.
Let's, excuse.
Very good question. So it is being taught in some schools. That is not my area of expertise, but I can tell you that one of our Kansas City Drawdown pioneers, Helen Nelson, is involved with a Sustainable Sanctuary organization, and she and Emily Leibel just did a presentation there, and they're taking it into curriculum in local universities and schools as of just a couple of weeks ago when they did that presentation. And I can tell you that Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, it's a couple hours north of New York City, they just had a gathering last weekend that is called Drawdown Learn, and it was a gathering of educational policy people, educational curriculum development from a wide range. I'm not familiar with their whole group, but they're specifically coming together to strategize about how to use a solutions-oriented approach to climate change education. So shifting from that fear model, it's hopeless, it's overwhelming, shifting to here are the solutions, here's the climate science, and here are the solutions, and supporting people. So that I know there are lots and lots, hundreds and hundreds of people that are working on that. That's the best answer I can give you. Is that helpful? So you can go to Omega Institute Sustainability Center and look at, you can see, I believe they've posted a presentation that Paul Hawken just gave last Friday about the most current information, and I'm not sure how much they're sharing about what happened yet at the weekend. So that's one place where I know people are working on it. And then other people through the Pachamama initiative are working on curriculum as well. And I'm not real versed in that, but those are the 2 best sources I know about it. So.
Seems like they all started in high schools also.
Oh, absolutely. We need it all. Yep. We can't wait for people to graduate high school to get engaged, right? The new IPCC report says we have less than 12 years. So we all got to use our sphere of influence, including education. Yeah. And there was a gentleman behind you that had a question. Mm-hmm.
Do you keep a scorecard of all the activities that you've done, or say the CO2 that you've sequestered?
There are
any
people.
Kind of scorecard.
Yeah, there are teams of people working on that, and we plan to do that in Kansas City. But we just went through the Pachamama curriculum. We were a part of the pilot group. They did pilots in a number of cities around the world, and we were a part of the pilot in April, May, June. And so we decided to devote our energy toward getting climate-wise candidates elected in the midterms. And so we deferred everything else we have in mind that we're going to be working on. That's one of the things we've got in our docket. So we have an introduction to Drawdown scheduled for the day after the election. and for the Sunday following the election. And our goal is to get teams of people that will go through during the month of November, December, and January, and then they'll make babies. And so we'll get another round of introductions to this drawdown, and people will go through that curriculum, and they'll take it out into their spheres of influence, their families, and so on and so forth. So we intend to create a dashboard where people can report on which sector they're engaged in, what they're engaged in. And we also intend to create, on our website, which is very rudimentary right now, we intend to create a section where we will actually certify organizations that they understand how their mission achieves these outcomes. And then we'll also have another section where any organization, whether or not they've been certified, if they're working on a drawdown solution in the Kansas City metro area, they will be listed so that we can be a clearinghouse so that people anywhere in the metro can say, you know, whenever they go to an introduction or a course or they hear about drawdown in whatever way, they can discover other people in the region who are working on those specific things. Does that answer your question?
I was thinking more in terms of tons of CO2.
Yeah, we intend to have a dashboard where people can report what they're doing, and it will have a calculator built in. That's down the pipeline a little ways. Some of you may know his work called Blessed Unrest, where he hired a staff to document 2 million organizations around the world that are working on environmental sustainability, human rights, indigenous rights. So he's got an incredible network, and he surveyed some of the people that he knows that have been working on this issue, and none of them could name the top 5 solutions. So it was a surprise to all the thought leaders. It was a surprise to the researchers who did this work, and I'm guessing it's probably a surprise to most of you. And so the question is, with this handout then, we're making it up as we go along, and the dashboard idea where it calculates is very useful, and we're not going to wait until we have that to get people engaged. Again, the IPCC report says we have less than 12 years. So the idea is to get people engaged at all sectors, at all levels of society. One of our goals is to have people that are on these drawdown circles come from a broad sector of Kansas City in terms of class, race, education level, so that we can build the social relationships while we're doing it. Sorry about that. Okay, I hope that answered your question enough. It's a great idea, and we'll get there eventually. And if you want to help on that, that'd be great. We need all the expertise and all the collaboration that's possible. Does anybody else have another question?
Is this going on in other countries too, or what kind of worldwide effort is there?
Yeah, it is going in other countries, and I don't have my finger on the pulse of that. The researchers that wrote the book, the reports that went into the book came from 22 countries, and there's currently 26 countries represented in their team. And I'm sure that's being diffused out through those people.
Sure.
And in addition to that, the Pachamama Alliance, I've been volunteering for the Pachamama Alliance, even though they're based in San Francisco and Ecuador. I've been volunteering for them for more than 10 years. And they have a network of more than 5,000 facilitators that lead a workshop called Awakening the Dreamer, Changing the Dream. That's about helping people see this precious moment that we have, and engaging people in getting involved in bringing forth a sustainable and just future for all of life. That's the larger mission of the Pachamama Alliance. And their focus is really turned now to drawdown and these drawdown circles. And so they're diffusing it out through those. I know there's more than 80 countries that have had this Awakening the Dream or Changing the Dream symposium. and the 5,000 facilitators, of which I'm one. So it's being diffused out through that, through the Pachamama Alliance, and now through Omega Institute, and lots of places. I was recently at an award ceremony at the University of Wisconsin last summer. A friend of mine was receiving an award, and their Institute of Environmental Studies is working on diffusing Drawdown. That's an international university with 50,000 students. Those are just specifics that I know, but it is being diffused out. And you're among the lucky early adopters. So I invite your participation. Any other questions?
Well, it seems like a huge problem, and we have a tendency to look for big solutions, but it's all the small stuff that adds up. And even if we do all of this and it still doesn't have the effect we hope it has, we can see we're putting a whole lot of CO2 in the atmosphere, and anything you can do to reduce it. And basically, if you look at this list, it's telling me to just pay attention to how my lifestyle might affect what's going on the planet and my neighbors. So it just makes me more aware of it, whether I do it or not.
Well, so I would submit to you, thank you for that, because I think a lot of people come to that place. And I would submit to you, in philosophy, there's a concept called necessary but not sufficient. So we can do all the necessary things, but if the aggregate isn't sufficient to what we're facing, we will fail. And so my challenge to each of you tonight is go beyond where you normally get stopped and actually rise to the opportunity in whatever way is meaningful for you to stretch yourself and not just stay with the knowledge of it, to actually get engaged in learning more, participating in communities of people that are actually taking measurable action. Don't leave here today and say, well, I'm glad I know about that, and go about business as usual. I mean, some of you have circumstances in your life where it's not a good time, and that's fine, and that's where we have that category on the bottom, just to let us know, no thank you right now. But I really encourage you to dig deep. We are facing the single greatest crisis that humanity has ever faced, and we need all hands on deck. We need to have joy and fun while we're doing it. And we need to not let ourselves off the hook. We can't just know about the solutions and then not get engaged. So I challenge you to not let yourself stay stuck there. Somebody else had a question. Was it you, Patty?
Yeah, I was just thinking about different numbers I've heard tonight. That you were mentioning 12 years from the IPCC, and I was thinking they said we had until 2040 before it gets really, really bad. And then this presentation said it's going to take 30 years. So do you know how that all fits together?
Yeah, thank you for the question. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance there and incongruity. So the presentation is pieces put together to convey the larger importance and persuade you that the possibility exists to reverse climate change over 30 years. And the old IP, I don't want to get into the woods about that. What I understand, which I haven't read it yet, but the new one that just came out like 2 weeks ago says that 12 years is, we need to scale up in 12 years. I don't want to misrepresent that because I haven't read it yet. But it's the urgency is the point, and so we want to make sense of things and look at our what are we going to invest in? Is it really going to make a difference? And I would encourage you to not get stopped there, just to know that with the conservative modeling that this team did. They discovered that we can scale up these top 80 solutions over 30 years and reverse climate change. And that's all going to morph with new data, with new activities. There's going to be unpredicted, game-changing events or technologies. That's all going to morph. And so to not kind of get stuck with being clear about whose prediction is accurate or right, I apologize if I've muddied the water on that. Pun intended, muddy rivers. But the point is that we now know that the solutions are known and we know how we can get engaged. And let's game on. Let's roll up our sleeves and get engaged. Is that helpful, Patty, or is that?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I guess the different groups of scientists have different estimates, and it changes.
Yeah.
Depending on what happens, like you're saying. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and so the thing is, they're all, Paul said in one moment, the science is really good, but it's all prediction. And so the point is that it's urgent, and it's this generation that's alive right now that we're at the helm. And roll up your sleeves, get engaged, and then learn as we go, and things will morph, and let's have fun doing it, and let's be compassionate toward one another. Let's challenge each other. Let's make it happen. So,
Pretty much the only thing we're sure about is that we haven't found ourselves in this situation before. So
be sure to please fill out the invitation to participate so we have feedback from you, and we'll get in touch with you as you request on the sheet. If there are no other questions, I think maybe the easiest thing is with that last batch of handouts. We can just hand them out as people are getting ready to leave, and we can call it a night if there's not another question. Yeah,
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, June.
Thank you. I hope to see many of you again in the coming weeks and months. Thank you.